Casual magic is about how we find beauty in the mundane everyday. We wait for the 1% of days in our lives that are tangibly extraordinary, like the wedding, the birthday, the job promotion. But most of our lives, 99% of our lives, are just ordinary. And wouldn't it be sad if we only allowed ourselves to feel joy 1% of the time? Casual magic is all about training our brain to find joy in the little things every single day that are casually magic. Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Jade and welcome to today's guest episode of Finding Your Casual Magic. And as always, this guest episode ties into our last episode all about finding your purpose. How do we know what to pursue in our lives? How do we know if something is the right path for us? And what do we do if later down the line, the path that we thought was what we wanted maybe doesn't serve us anymore? I am so excited to be interviewing my dear friend Eve Cornwell, who has a lot of answers to these questions. Eve Cornwell became known for wanting to become a lawyer. She started vlogging at university while studying law and amassed a huge audience with her unique editing style and original storytelling abilities. I genuinely can remember being so immensely inspired by how creative and high effort her videos were. And let's just say, this girl was very happy to sacrifice monetization in order to use a fire song. But while the world knew her as this ambitious trainee lawyer, I was lucky enough to know her as Eve, one of my funniest, bravest, impact-driven friends. And she has also been a huge role model for me in learning to embrace my sexuality and queerness. Knowing Eve since I was just a little 18-year-old baby was huge for me. We really navigated our ascent into the social media realm together, even hosting the Wooden Spoon podcast with Ruby Granger, who's already been on this podcast, and our dear friend Jack Edwards. And now our friendship has graduated to me even sending her rogue texts like, "Eve, I need you to teach me how on earth I use a..."
We're going there today, okay? I didn't know you were including that.
So evidently, much has happened since Eve quit law, went offline, came back online, and began owning her queerness. And guys, she's literally getting married soon, which is crazy. And for those of you who are tenderly exploring who you are and how you love and what your purpose is in this world, I really hope this episode resonates. So, without further ado, hello Eve, welcome.
Hello Jade, my dear friend.
How are you after that jump scare of an intro?
I wasn't prepared for that. I feel like maybe I need to tell my mum not to listen to this one.
Sorry.
I'm so excited to be here. What an honour to be asked to this beautiful podcast, but I'm really excited to talk about some things I haven't really had the space to talk about before. So let's do it.
Before we jump in, I really love to invite my guests and all of you guys watching to just really be here with intentionality and to ground ourselves. So I ask everyone, whether you guys are, I don't know, at the library at university, or you're on your work break, or you're on the bus, to just take the next 60 to 90 seconds to meditate with me and really ground into yourself and hopefully overcome that jump scare moment. Just for these next 60 to 90 seconds, I dare you not to scroll. I dare you to put on Do Not Disturb mode and to commit to really being here. And I hope that this little meditation moment allows you to come back feeling lighter, more grounded, and ready to dig into our experiences. Take a second to notice where you are in space. Are you in a room? If so, how big is the room? Are you outside? What can you see? And if you feel comfortable to do so, gently close your eyes. Start to become aware of your breathing. Notice where you can feel the breath in your body. Maybe noticing the rise of your chest and belly at the inhale and fall on the exhale. Imagine yourself rooting down into the ground, feeling grounded and aware. And maybe start to notice if you're carrying tension anywhere in your body. If you can, try to allow that tension to release at the exhale. We're going to do a final 4, 6, 8 breath, where you'll take a deep inhale for 4, hold it for 6, and then exhale for 8. So when you're ready, deep inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold at the top for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And big exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. Welcome to the episode. Okay, Eve. So it's pretty public knowledge that for a lot of your life, you wanted to become a lawyer. But I actually think I don't know the origin story of how you initially decided that that was the path you wanted to pursue, maybe the people in your life that shaped that decision. When did you first realize that you wanted to become a lawyer?
Gosh, let's take it back to baby Eve. So I think we all have that relatable situation in our teens where you kind of get to the point where you go like, oh, like, God, like, what am I going to do when all this like education stuff ends? And for me, I had like a number of criteria in my head. I knew I wanted to somehow like move to London and to have kind of like a career in the city. And I grew up in the Northwest. And so I only had the opportunity to travel to London once or twice in my life. And I loved it and the energy there. So I was like, okay, and I want to do something in the city. I really excelled in actually a lot of creative things at school, but I kind of also did a lot of like writing and humanities. And so, you know, the kind of classic thing people say is like, well, you can't go wrong with a law degree. Mm-hmm. So I kind of really cherished the amount of structure that gave me. I think with any vocational career, you already have like such a set path and you can cling to that. And I think in your teens, when you're already like struggling with like figuring yourself out and like a number of things that come with the coming of age and growing up, then the structure I got from, okay, I know there's a very clear path for me and I know the steps that are required to get me there, then that's kind of what I pursued. And then I went to the University of Bristol and I was surrounded by...
I was almost going to go to.
I know, exactly. I missed you there. I went to the University of Bristol. I was surrounded by so many people who wanted to do similar things to me, kind of really thought in the same way that I did, were very kind of like ambitious. And I don't know, I think law schools can tend to have quite bad culture actually. When I look back now and I reflect on what you're kind of encouraged to pursue, you kind of, it's the classic story, you enter law school kind of wanting to do law for quote unquote the right reasons and the moral reasons of like how law can be like a weapon of justice and it can kind of be a sword and a shield for those that don't have access to the law or justice. And you kind of, over your 3-4 years of doing a law degree, you lose a lot of that because it's very hard as a 22-year-old or 21-year-old to say no to the huge amounts of benefits that a corporate career can give you. And I definitely got swept up in that.
Originally, did you have a vision of yourself as a lawyer, like kind of fighting for change and that changed across the university?
I mean, like, even if I look at like kind of like my experience as a teenager, like I think if I had people that would describe me in high school, like I was such like a fierce warrior for, like I set up our first like debating society and like I remember going around with like a really silly petition in like year 8 or year 9 about like banning like non-free range eggs for chickens, like and like the original vegan, and I always had such a strong sense of like justice, which I don't know whether that sounds like a stupid thing to say, but like always wanting to like fight a cause for something. I've always been really into politics. I was out campaigning for the Labour Party since a very young age, and I guess I thought that spirit would continue into my career, and law felt a really kind of empowered way to do that as a young person because you can't really access many other ways to impact and influence society in the way that we're governed by law. And then when I got to uni, I think university is like a really humbling time of realizing like how the world actually works. Law specifically as an industry, there's just like not a lot, if any, funding in and continuously decreasing funding in kind of like areas and disciplines that aren't corporate. And not only are there very few jobs, but those jobs aren't very well funded. And you almost have to make, to be honest, a lifestyle decision at that point, whether that's something that you care, you're so purpose driven and you want to go after, that it kind of defines a lot about your lifestyle. And so because I knew I really wanted to get to London, it felt like a lot more of a safer decision for me to go after kind of like a city-based training contract. And that's what I went after. And I had a great time. Like, you know, it's not what I'm still doing, but when I was at uni, you know, I used to go on the train to London and do all these kind of corporate internships, and you get wined and dined. And,
oh, come on.
You know, it's really funny, like the graduate market, especially in these kind of like corporate, I mean, it's the same in finance, it's the same, I'm sure, in like insurance and accounting and the big four and consulting. And, you know, these graduate companies have so much budget for bringing in graduates that and I'd also say, like, I think I was quite vulnerable as well as a graduate at uni, because like I didn't have the money to put myself through the legal qualification route. Like after uni, you have to do a few years of qualification, and I knew I wouldn't be able to afford that myself. So I was like, okay, if I want to do this, I need to be corporate funded. I knew I wouldn't be able to afford rent in London. I don't have the money to do that, even if I'd have had a job. So for me, it was a ticket to the city. And when you're 21, that's very exciting, because you get treated kind of like the prize at the auction.
And so what were your expectations going into that training contract?
I don't think there's anything out there that can prepare you for what a training contract is. I think you go into corporate law and you kind of think, oh, it's going to be like Suits, even though, you know, oh, it's not going to be quite like Suits, because like, how could it be like that sexy? And, you know, even Suits, you're following the journey of like basically someone at partnership level who is completely independently running his own career and running his own deals. Like, realistically, you're not going to get to that point in your career in the legal industry in the UK for like potentially 10 to 15 years. So the idea that would be your lifestyle is just misleading, I guess. I don't know. I think I had the expectation that it would be a great platform for me. I don't think I was ever someone who thought really long term about, you know, wanting to be like a big partner at a law firm. I don't think I necessarily knew what I wanted to do, but I knew it would open the right doors for me. It would bring me social mobility. It would bring me economic mobility, and so that's where my expectations were. And I think about the job practically, I was kind of like prepared to just be like, well, whatever the job is, I can kind of take it, because I get all of these benefits, and I'll be surrounded by all these people who will make me a better young professional. So I was kind of like willing to give it a go, I guess. Yeah.
So you did have an awareness of kind of the difficulty, but you were willing to sacrifice whatever was necessary for the rewards of that.
And it's really funny as well, because like I think that's actually like quite weird when you say it out loud, when you're like the level of sacrifice you're willing to give. Like, I think sacrifice is a big theme in legal careers. You can't be successful in law without a level of sacrifice. And there's a lot of conversations happening now about like what it is to be, for example, a woman in law, because you have a lot of sacrifices around your time and potentially like your body and you know, the biological time clock we have, and what that means for your career and your progression. There's a lot more of those conversations happening, but I think it would be wrong to suggest that there isn't quite a significant level of sacrifice that you need to give in the legal industry to kind of go the distance. And I think that's why there's a really like interesting like drop-off graph for people that enter the legal industry. So if you look at like when you're the most junior level of a lawyer, you're like a trainee lawyer. And then you go up through the ranks as like associate and managing associate and like counsel and partner. And there's like a big drop-off rate where like people get to a point where they either realize, you know, the sacrifice is too much, or it's not the right balance for me, or they go and try something different. And so, you know, you go from a trainee intake of maybe like 36 people at the start of the year, and actually only 4 of them are still there for partnership.
Wow.
If that. Yeah. So like there is a big kind of, I think it's like a known acceptance when you enter the corporate legal field that like it's not necessarily your long-term plan, but it's definitely going to, like, assuming that you are the archetype of being like, you know, someone who wants to be challenged, or someone that wants to work very hard, or someone that wants to get a level of reward for that hard work, then people think that's worth it. And I guess that's what the trade-off is.
Yeah. And I suppose that's what you thought that you were going into that. Yeah,
totally. And it like, it would be wrong to pretend that didn't serve me in many ways. I remember the first 6 months of my training contract was just like, an absolute whirlwind. And like, I was so young, like I was 22. I was running corporate deals for some of the biggest banks, corporates in the world, household names. And I was someone who was like help running these transactions. It gave me a huge ego. It gave me a huge power trip. You know, you feel like you're at the center of the world. I would be working on deals that would be the front page of the FT the next day. And you feel like you're part of that elite financial system, and you feel like a part of it. And what I think is really interesting about law is like how long the novelty lasts. So I'd say it took me about 6 months for me to like kind of crash out of that novelty and be like, actually, like, I don't want to be working till 12 a.m. every day. This isn't normal. And as that novelty wears off, you get faced with really hard truths. And you can either decide to like kind of repress those and kind of be like, well, this is what I signed up for. I'm doing it. It's worth it. It's worth the trade-off. And this isn't just law. This is a number of other professions that will push you really far. And once the novelty wears off, like ego will wear off, those power trips wear off, like being on the front page of the FT wears off. These are all novelties. Once that all wears off, what are you doing on an everyday basis? Does it actually excite you? Does it actually make you happy? And I think people get confronted at that at different stages of their career. For me, it came quite early.
I was going to ask as well. So was that novelty and was power trip added to because of the brand you were building online as a lawyer? Like how did your YouTube channel contribute to this journey of being viewed as a lawyer?
It's really interesting because I think there are a number of like misconceptions about my journey online and my journey as a lawyer. So like I applied and I got my training contract before I created any YouTube content. I wanted to use my YouTube channel as a way of having some sort of authenticity about the career. Now, whether I achieved that or not, I don't know, but I wanted to introduce more people to the field of law and corporate law, ultimately try and have like a more diverse and more normal and interesting group of people be involved in the legal profession, because they have a big issue with diversity and attracting those kinds of talented young people, but also some authenticity to it. Like when I was studying for a lot of my legal exams, I was very honest online about
you definitely were
about like
the
workload, how stressful it was,
the sacrifice.
But then I started my training contract, and I remember having a conversation at the time with someone I worked closely with, and it was basically that a big thing I prided myself on with my YouTube channel was my authenticity, and to an extent like self-deprecating myself. Like I don't mind being the butt of a joke. Like I don't mind getting online and being like, I'm super stressed. I actually might fail this exam, but like we're in it together and this is where I'm at. I don't mind being that person. And you know that, like I'm the first person to joke about myself rather than joke about another. Like I don't have an issue with vulnerability. The issue is you then start a job as a corporate professional and you can't be vulnerable anymore. Like a lawyer cannot be vulnerable. You have to have a perfect record, not only from like a professional networking point of view and like your own like law firm's policies, of which every law firm has a policy. It wasn't just mine. Also, you're a regulated individual. You have a code of ethics similar to doctors. Lawyers are frequently and continually fined and struck off due to non-professional behavior. So actually I felt that my YouTube really clashed with the experience I was having. I felt like I was really split in my experience because I had this audience online that I felt I owed a level of authenticity to, and an audience I loved. I absolutely loved my YouTube channel and I loved that relationship I had with people. But then I had this job that I was now taking on that was like, felt like, well, firstly, I couldn't talk about it. I felt very censored. But secondly, the purpose that I had started with online, I was not really able to fulfill because I couldn't be honest about it. I couldn't be like, don't be a lawyer if you don't want to work 15-hour days, which is the truth. As a trainee solicitor, like if you're not prepared for some days to be that long, don't do it because it will hit you and then your expectations will be changed. So then I really dealt with that conflict. I I found that conflict really challenging because I couldn't be authentic. That was a stressful 2 years, basically.
Yeah, because you still loved it as a creative outlet, right?
Oh my God,
you still
hugely.
wanted to be creating, you still want to be telling stories of your life.
Yes.
But at the same time, you actually can't be fully honest about the experiences you're going through.
Yeah. And also, like, I've realized now, like, I'm a good few years later than that now. I'm like, 4 or 5 years on from where I was when I first started that journey. And, naturally I'm much more creative than I ever was suited to being a lawyer. Like, it's hilarious. Like, if I actually look in the mirror now, I think it's hilarious that I thought I wanted to be a corporate lawyer. Like, it doesn't suit me at all. Like, I am so goofy by nature and I'm so creative and I'm so silly. And the way I think and the way I problem solve, I love risk and I love trying new things. And like, law by nature is retrospective. Law by nature looks backwards for precedent. It's risk averse. It is it's impersonal. It is very serious. And all those things are important to the profession. It has a level of trust with it, but none of that is me. So I think it was also like a hard 2 years of like decoding that and like confronting myself with the fact that I'd also chosen something that was so separate to who I was as an individual. It caused like a real identity crisis.
How did those cracks start to form? You said about 6 months in, maybe you were starting to realize that the sacrifice wasn't worth it, or you weren't maybe as content as you thought you would be.
Look, I think 6 months in, I was exhausted.
Yeah,
and I think in a level of exhaustion, you start to go, okay, like, is this worth it? You kind of get worn down like a little bit. And I think as well, like, I was having to give up parts of myself that like I'd never even considered were like up for bargaining. So like I just didn't feel like myself at work. I wasn't dressing like myself. I was also going through like a huge queer discovery journey at the time.
We need to get into this.
Which we will talk about. But like, I just remember like day by day being like, this isn't what I want to do. Like, what? And actually, like, something I've never talked about, like, the conflict I had during my training contract where I was posting, like, I felt like I was under a lens. So like, I was under every single YouTube video I posted, there was a legal journalism outlet that would immediately, after every video, pick it apart. There'd be comment sections full of lawyers, full of people in the legal industry saying, oh, no one can take her seriously. Like, isn't this ridiculous that this person is trying to be a lawyer, but they're also trying to have this kind of like online presence? So it creates this really negative thought loop where you go, okay, every time I do something that I think I love, which is creating, I get like hugely bitten for it as well. And so every time I was posting a video, I'd get this huge backlash within the legal community. That also really wears you down. The cracks turn into like huge splits within yourself. And like, I had like full on traumatic stress disorder from trying to appease two completely different worlds of people. I'm trying to keep a job at one of the most serious and traditional institutions in the world, whilst also trying to express myself on a platform where people just want more and more authenticity that I, by default, cannot give them. And I had a full breakdown. Like, the reason I stopped making YouTube videos was just like, I cannot give you, from an online perspective, I was like, I cannot give you what you want from me, even though I want that very, very badly. I cannot keep my job. And at the time, I wasn't prepared to give up my job. I wasn't prepared to walk away from law. So something had to give. And I hated that, because one thing I've like tried to always say is like, don't ever give up everything of yourself for anyone, whether it's a person, a relationship, a job. There are sparks of yourself that come out in creative capacities, your hobbies, the things that make you happy, the things that make you wake up in the morning. They are never the things that should be lost. You should always be questioning what is causing you to give it up. And I wish I'd have realized that at the time, because I spent, those 2 years of my training contract just becoming so disenfranchised with myself. I lost a huge amount of my sense of self as well. Like, I remember like leaving law a bit later on, and that was after I'd kind of like had this diagnosis, and I was doing a lot of therapy to understand that and understand my anxiety, which was like really, really high at the time. And I was like trying to understand who I was, and I just felt so confused to like who Eve was. And I remember saying in therapy at session at the time, like, I knew who I was at 18 and I've just spent 4 years undoing all of that.
Wow.
Because I've made myself someone in order to appease someone else. And I've not been authentic to myself at all. It's one of my, I don't know, I'm not sure whether I believe in regrets, but if I do have a regret, it's that. It's how much of myself I gave up and I sacrificed in order to appease a job or an institution or people that actually I don't care about, which is wild. And I'm in a complete, that was a while ago. That was over 3 years ago that I left law, and I'm in a way better place now. And I've been on a real path over the past 3 years of trying to reconnect with myself and understand who I am and what I want.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. So what was the turning point? Like, how did you decide to leave? What is this journey you're speaking of? How have you come back to authenticity?
Yeah.
What have the last few years of Eve held?
I've had so many of these conversations because I think it's so important, especially in traditional careers where you feel such sunk cost fallacy. You've done years of training, you've either personally invested or funded amounts of education, or you're just like, you feel too deep in, like there is such thing as golden handcuffs. Maybe you've got a mortgage and your job pays you a certain amount. You don't feel you can step back and take a risk. And I have a lot of conversations with people who are looking to leave law and they want to pursue something that feels more authentic to them. I had an amazing opportunity during my training contract to basically second, which basically means you get put on like basically a placement. I applied for this placement that was the only non-legal placement at my law firm.
The signs were there.
The signs were there. I was like, I just need to spend 6 months doing something that isn't legal, where I'm not, like, law is crazy. Like, it's based on the billable hour. I had to, for those 2 years, every 6 minutes record what I was doing. And at the end of each week, someone sat down and looked at whether you were doing enough hours per day. And you were told to either work harder or that you were at the right level, and you were a statistic. Like, I needed to get out of that headspace. That was not the way I should have been basing like my personal productivity or value, and it becomes so normal. And so I wanted to step out of that for 6 months. I got to do this tech secondment, which I owe so much credit for, and the people who worked at that tech company were such fantastic mentors and people to me, and I tell them that very often. It's also why I recommend that, like, you expose yourself to new things as much as you can, because you might surprise yourself. So I ended up doing 6 months at this tech startup and I loved it. And I don't know why it should have surprised me that I love it, because tech is this crazy melting pot of people who are inherently kind of disruptive in their thinking. I kind of hate that term as a buzzword, like disruptive, challenger, but like you're essentially challenging status quo, which also really aligns with the way I identify with my like queer identity as well, which is like non-conforming. I find tech very non-conforming because you're ultimately trying to, as a tech startup, you're trying to oust whatever the norm is. And so I started this legal tech company that was trying to rethink the way that contracts are made. And maybe that doesn't sound really exciting, but in the legal industry, that's like huge. That's like reinventing the wheel, basically. And so I got to sit on the other side of the table where I was trying to convince people to do things differently for benefit that we could give them. I worked with engineers, and software engineers are amazing, the most amazing, brilliant people, and they think so creatively and differently to lawyers. They work with no ego. They work in a fail fast mentality. They work in progress over perfection. They just want to kind of work iteratively. Okay, we'll just get it done and then see how we can improve. And coming from a real culture of perfectionism in the legal industry, where you were so worried about every single email being sent and making sure full stops were in every place, to someone being like, okay, we made a mistake, let's pivot, let's move. What did we learn from the mistake? What can we learn as a team? And that being like a really important part of the culture was amazing. And I spent that 6 months being like, how can I do more of this?
Wow, because it's undoing your entire philosophy that law's given you.
Yeah. And I was really confronted as well, because I think if I'd have gone straight into tech from being an 18-year-old, I would have taken to it like a duck to water.
Wow.
But I actually, because I'd just done 2 years of really regimented and quite institutionalized legal practice, I found some things really hard to shift to. And that's only spending 2 years, a year and a half in legal practice. So this is why I really empathize with people who want to change their careers, who are maybe a few years in or 10 years in. Like, change is really uncomfortable,
100%.
but that doesn't mean that you should avoid it. That doesn't mean there isn't space for you. And, you know, I spent a lot of those 6 months really like reworking my own recipe for success and like reevaluating what work should mean. I remember I woke up each morning, I was really excited to go to work, and that was weird for me. I think it's really normalized in the legal profession that like
to dread it.
Yeah, people kind of do dread their jobs, and you know, I'm generalizing that. Like, sure, not everyone does, but there's a lot of people that just see their job as their job. They work at their job in order to get the lifestyle they want. And I'm just never able to have that separation. Some people can, and that's great, and they make great money from it, right? But for me, like, I have to really care about what I'm doing. I'm a very like purpose driven person. I think I'm quite an intense person as well, so I can't just like switch off and do my job. Like, I want to be so in it and involved. And also tech brings out a really creative side of me. So I work in product management, and product management is all about being like the CEO, the mini CEO of the development team. And so you get to work with designers about crafting the vision of the product that you want and the software that you want to build. You get to then refine that. You get to figure out with like a sales team commercially what you think will sell to the market. What should you build first? What might come second? You then get to work with engineers and you get to figure out how it's built. So in your job, you're constantly answering all of the how, what, why, when questions all in one role. And that's so rare that you get to answer all those questions. It's really cross-functional, it's super collaborative. It suits me in so many ways. So I feel really, really grateful that I've kind of really been able to find something that I now think will be kind of what I want to do for life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've found a sense of purpose in your career that can guide you throughout the rest of your career?
Yeah, I think I found a sense of purpose, and I would actually argue it's separate to my career. I think my sense of purpose is wanting to feel like I am personally impacting something. And I think I look at that, and that, yes, it carries into my career, but it also carries into my hobbies and my relationships. And like, I feel so strongly that your purpose should be separate to your career. You must not attach your career to your self-identity. You must not attach your purpose to your career to the extent you can, because you leave yourself very, very vulnerable. And you also hugely narrow your purpose as well. As humans, we're such complex, emotional, creative, multifaceted human beings. The idea that you would tie your purpose to like accounting is just like it's not realistic. Like, we live in a capitalist society of fake jobs. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the idea that you
shifting some numbers to make more numbers from other people.
Yeah. Your career should contribute to your purpose. It's not that your purpose should be found within your career. And but that's a crazy like prioritization of self that I think a lot of people have maybe not. I mean, I say this because I didn't do that. I never kind of prioritized what I wanted. Like, if I even at the start of this conversation, we talked about like, how did you get into law? I spent all of my teens thinking like, how do I become accepted into law? I never prioritized self and thought, what can I give to a career that will make me good at that career and make me have value and make me have impact? I think so often we make ourselves more vulnerable to rejection and to judgment by thinking about how we serve others, rather than thinking like, what can others get from me? And the more vulnerable we place ourselves in that transaction, it can feel more transactional. I feel like I'm in a place now where I'm saying, you know, I try and limit myself to situations that serve me. I mean, I've been on a huge journey over the last year, like looking at, you know, my relationships, my friendships, really trying to audit my life and making sure every aspect of my life serves me, because life is short. And why would you not do things that make you smile, make you feel in love, make you feel excited, make you feel safe. It's just centering yourself is the most important thing I have done.
Wow, I'm genuinely so happy for you. I feel like I've like witnessed this entire journey within you as well.
You
like
have.
I watched you start the training contract and become a lot less of a frequent replier.
Can I ask you a
text.
question?
Yeah, go on.
Because obviously you knew me outside of you have such an interesting perspective on me, I guess, as a person, because I met you in a totally creative space, and obviously you knew I was a lawyer, but you maybe weren't super involved in like that area of my life. Did you ever think it was weird that I was a lawyer?
Oh, 1,000,000%. 100%. I feel like your videos also demonstrated that you are fundamentally one of the most creative people I've ever met. Like the way that you vlogged was so much more than a vlog. Like I feel like you reinvented a way to create videos in the lifestyle manner that like people literally viewed your videos as like what's it called when a movie like premiere? It's like a premiere. Like every time a video came out, it was like, oh my god, Eve's released another video, because it was so creative the way that you were making those videos. And and so to think that you were spending 5 days a week alone,
it's wild,
in a sterile office environment, tapping away and answering your emails, it was really hard to believe. But at the same time, I also saw you as someone very articulate, very like academically brilliant. Even I feel like you've had moments of being like, I wasn't a study tuber. Like there's a reason you were also in this space, right? Like you're so sharp-minded, and so I knew that you could be doing law and be good at it, but I didn't necessarily see your soul being nurtured there.
No, it wasn't.
And it's been really special the last few years to watch you flourish into yourself. And I think this is a lovely segue to discussing your queer journey.
Oh my God,
your journey
let's
with
talk
queerness.
about it.
I don't know if you remember the day that you came out to me. Do you remember?
I don't remember this.
Okay. It was during the training contract era, so I feel like you were a busy, hectic human. I went to your apartment and we went into your bedroom. And for some reason, I remember you standing like by a mirror. There was like a long mirror. I remember you turning to me and being like, I think I like girls. And it was the first time ever that I then admitted to someone that I also liked girls. That was the day I also came out for the first time ever, was to you in that moment. Yeah.
I never knew that. You've never told me that. Yeah. How dare you never tell me that?
Saving it for the podcast.
Even years ago, you were like, I'm going to have a podcast one day and this is going to be a moment.
No, but truly, you were the first person I ever came out to. And it was back when I was a deeply baby gay. Like I was terrified of the prospect of liking girls and what that could mean for my life, and it was not something that I would then act upon for many years after. But
you took your time.
I did. But you were such a big part of me owning my sexuality, and your bravery was really important to me one day being brave. So
that's wonderful to hear. I just love queer people. I feel like everyone queer that I've spoken to has such a magical, like, self-nurturing journey, because there is nothing more confronting than realizing you're maybe different and like the journey to acceptance of that is long. A treacherous road.
It
truly is. And even when you think you fully accepted yourself, you then get confronted with something else and you go, oh, maybe I wasn't fully like at the moment.
Marriage has patriarchal ideals.
Oh my God. So I had the absolute honor of proposing to my girlfriend literally like this time last year. We're just celebrating our anniversary today. Shout out Lucy. I love you. You've changed my life for the better. So yeah, at the point in which I got into a relationship with my girlfriend, I was kind of like out, quote unquote, for a year, and I'd only really just started like properly dating women, and like immediately met my person, and we just like have been on that path together since. I was like, oh, I'm so good at being queer. Like, what the fuck does that mean? But like I was so like, you know, I really thought like I'd spoken about it at that point.
Done the work, internalized homophobia gone.
Yeah, like I'd spoken to my parents at that point, and I even spoke to my grandparents, which was for me was actually a really great experience, which I know is so rare, and I'm so privileged for that. And I had thought about my self-expression, which is an ongoing journey, because I don't know how I feel about my gender, and that's like an ongoing thing. But I'd at least started to like think about it. And I was like, I'm really on the path. And then when I realized I wanted to marry my girlfriend, I had this huge new wave of like, oh, like I now have to conform to a norm. Marriage is a norm because it has been created for straight people. And so like everything about it is like spiced, is like sprinkled with patriarchy. And so like there's probably like a really important debate about like, can you reclaim marriage? Like, is marriage reclaimable as a queer person? For me, it feels really important that I do reclaim marriage for me personally. We got the right to be married in 2014. People fought for that. And I really want to be married and I want to have a wife, and that's important to me. It's not important to everyone else. Going through the proposal journey and being like, oh, I now need to propose. I now need to think about marriage was really, really hard. And I'll give you one example. So I proposed to my girlfriend. No shock. I'm a super type A person. I'm super like, I'm a bit of a control freak. I like everything being perfect. And so my wonderful girlfriend is Portuguese. I went over to Portugal. I proposed to her in her Portuguese hometown. It was beautiful. And as soon as I proposed, I felt really empty.
Wow.
Because I had just defined her as what felt like the woman in the relationship.
Oof.
And so everyone we spoke to only cared about her because they were like, let's see the ring. How is the experience? I probably felt what it is like to be a man, which people probably don't ask men enough.
Yeah.
You know, how was that proposal journey? But I kind of felt like really left out of the experience because I proposed, but I didn't feel like a part of the celebration. She felt like the one celebrated. And actually, because she's the most amazing woman I've ever met, she ended up proposing back to me about 2 months later, which we love equity in queer relationships. We really do love the equity. And that meant that I got a ring in the end.
The most gorgeous ring.
A gorgeous ring by a queer artist who uses reclaimed metals. Then I was able to show that to people. But I was like, how crazy that I only felt like truly able to like be seen by others as engaged by having a ring and being proposed to, and what does that mean? And like I felt that was so hard, and I spent like 2 months feeling really confronted about it. I still don't know how I feel about it now. Like it's very weird. It's a conversation that's not had a lot because I think often as queer people we feel so, well, I'll speak about my own perspective. I feel so privileged that I can even marry Lucy.
100%.
I feel so privileged that I can marry her and that we can have that life together and it's safe for us to do so. And we can see a real roadmap of that like marriage and what that looks like for us. That like, I often don't really feel able to complain or talk about it because like, maybe then it'll be taken away. Like I feel so protective over it, but there's actually so many things that don't make sense. And even with the marriage ceremony that we're planning now, like I don't know how I feel about walking down an aisle, and like we're not getting married in a church, but like should either of us be given away by our parents? And like that feels a bit weird to me. And like just unpicking so many rituals has been fascinating, but it requires some thick skin, because 100%. If you're not prepared to do that as a queer person with a lot of space to process, then it'll bite you because it's not been made for us.
Here we go. And it's like a total redefining of everything, of how you walk through the world, of how these rituals are conducted.
Yeah.
And I think straight people don't realize what a mental burden that can feel like to have to redefine how you move through all the spaces that have been created by a history that maybe you don't relate to.
Yeah.
How was it in your journey to like embracing your queerness when you were working in such a heteronormative space? You mentioned that you weren't able to dress how you wanted to dress within law, and how did that contribute to maybe your sense of, I don't know, like dysmorphia in that space as well, dissociation?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think different queer people view their queerness in totally personal ways. For me, I do see my queerness as an act of rebellion.
Yeah.
I can't really like verbalize that really well, but like I do see pride as a protest. I do see my existence as a rebellion against norm. Maybe that's because like I identify as queer rather than, you know, maybe a different identity that doesn't feel as tied to that rebellion. But as I worked my way through my training contract and basically decided to give less of an F about what people thought of me, I just started being more, what felt like more rebellious. So I dropped a lot of my corporate wear. I dressed a lot more gender neutrally. I talked a lot at the law firm about the importance of gender neutral dressing and I don't know. I mean, law firms are coming a long way, and to an extent they're actually doing better than other sectors because they have the funding for diversity programs. So like actually like even because I'm involved in like the 93% Foundation, which is an amazing charity that looks at bringing state educated kids and students into city careers. And actually if you look at the diversity statistics, places like law and finance are actually a lot better than like creative industries now. Because they have the funding.
Yeah.
So they can
and there's more eyes on them.
There's more eyes on them. They're held more accountable, and therefore they have the funding to have platforms for diversity. They have pipelines for Black lawyers. They have pipelines for queer lawyers. Like, so I feel like that is changing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And if you're going to be in the Pride Parade in London, then you've got to do something behind the scenes
well,
too.
you'd be surprised, but yeah. But I kind of felt a real opportunity to have these like mini acts of rebellion. And as I mean, towards the end of my time in law, I was just fully wearing like hoodies to work and very like non-conforming dress wear. And I felt like I talked through this in therapy as well. And I was like, I'm not even like I am quite like a chill person in the way I dress, but I was being like extra chill and extra streetwear to make a point. Like I could feel myself like making a point.
So brave.
But it was also like,
because I feel like there's also like a loss of privilege that comes with like maybe giving up your femininity in the way you're dressing, right? And how like it helps you move through those spaces in more beneficial ways. And so yeah.
But I do feel as a person, I do feel like I'm the kind of person where it might take me a while to like fully own something, but once I own it, I tend to like fucking own it.
Yeah.
So like once I had like realized this is who I am and this is what I'm going to be non-apologetic about, that was who I was.
Yeah.
And if I was able to do that and dress in that way, I thought that at least there might be other queer people in the company who might see that and think, oh, I can dress how I want to as well. It's all about, you know, putting your hand down to pull others up, and you might be having more of an impact that you're even aware of. So I don't know. That's kind of how I approached it.
I love it. Okay, I feel like we're slowly coming to the end of the ep.
Oh my goodness. I could talk for hours with you.
Honestly, same. I feel like everything is just like dropping gem after gem. But I would love to ask you for your words of wisdom, your words of advice on these two themes. So maybe first with queerness. If there's anyone out there who is maybe tenderly asking questions of their sexuality, but is maybe terrified of the prospect of going against the norm, do you have any advice for them as they start to explore this journey?
I'd say there's a big piece around, I think there's a lot of allyship now that wasn't, and like spaces that are available now. And I'm talking from my position as being a queer person in London, in the UK. This will not be the same everywhere, and I'm aware of that. But there's a lot of queer spaces that you can get involved in where you don't have to define yourself, and you don't have to enter those spaces saying like, hey, I know who I am. I am this identity. This is how you need to refer to me. These are my pronouns. You can go in and just be yourself, your name, or the name that you've chosen to use that identifies with you. And for me, I found a lot of solace and a lot of comfort in just being able to watch other people be unapologetic and almost like taking that bravery from them, almost like putting it in a bottle and like keeping it with me emotionally, and like having that set the standard for myself. So I mean, in London there's lesbian run clubs, there's queer bouldering sessions, there's queer cinemas, there's queer singing groups, like every single thing possible. And the great thing about queer spaces is they will never demand you to explain yourself. And so it's sometimes, even though it feels scarier, it's sometimes actually easier to be around queer people when you're discovering your queerness, because they will never expect an explanation.
So true.
Whereas sometimes when you're around, there's a lot more questions when you can be around non-queer people, because then you have to like try and explain yourself and you might not be ready for that.
And through a lens that is relatable to them.
Yeah, exactly. And like, trying to find that translation. Yeah. Exactly. So I'd say try and lean into those resources. They might be online, they might be in person, it might take baby steps. I think TikTok has been revolutionary.
Oh, amen. Like, TikTok knew I was queer before I did.
Oh my God, I would have realized so much earlier if I had had TikTok in like my teens.
Yeah.
I don't know whether there's anyone listening who's like maybe questioning their sexuality like slightly later on in life, but like I only realized I was queer between the ages of like 22 and 23. Like I spent a lot of my life thinking I would marry a man.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And then dating loads of men and being like, oh, like this isn't really working, or this isn't fulfilling me. And then really unpacking that. So there's no time limit. There's no time ever in your life where you need to be sure of who you are. It's all a journey. Take small steps, micro steps, look for role models, kind of like suck the bravery and the unapologetic energy from them and slowly add it into your diet of how you speak to yourself and how you treat yourself. And I think that can be really powerful. It doesn't need to happen overnight. It can take a really long time, and find beauty in that journey. I always find my queerness like an onion. Like every single year I take off a layer of myself. As a friend, you've probably seen this. Like every year I think I become more authentic. Like I recently, for example, have cut all my hair off.
Slay. This is the grand unveiling.
My grand unveiling, because I've not posted anything online. And I did that to become closer to what felt like a more gender neutral version of myself. But I wouldn't have been ready to do that 5 years ago. And you know, it's taken till now to be really excited to do it, and that's fine. And there might be stages in my life where I want to be more feminine in my expression or more masculine in my expression, but there's no expectation. That's the beauty. That's the most wonderful thing about queerness. It's so fluid, and it's so accepting for the different like chapters of your queer life. And even if each year you're just peeling away a little bit more of the person that grew to fit norms and peeling back the person that you were born to be, that is all you need to ask yourself to do.
Eve, that's beautiful. And also now I'm thinking, I was born this way.
Oh my God, Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
GG.
Gaga moment. Thank you so much. I just, hearing that resonates so much with me. So I can only imagine for someone who is at the start of that journey, how much that's going to hit.
Also, like one other thing I'd say is like, oh my God, you have so much to experience. You have so much life and love and energy to experience. Like, if you think you could be queer, you're about to have the best life. Like it's going to take a while. And also I'm very aware that's a privileged thing to say, because look, being queer is really challenging in a number of places, but that point of self-acceptance and like getting past that arc of self-acceptance and realizing how magical you are for being queer is like amazing. And that journey is going to bring you so much.
Damn. Love it. Thank you. Okay. And as a final piece of advice for anyone who is in a job that maybe they are starting to question whether it is the right path for them. Maybe they're feeling this sunk cost fallacy, right? I've been working for this my whole life. I've invested an entire degree. Monetarily, I've invested. Everyone knows that this is the path that I'm meant to be on. What advice would you give to them if they're starting to realize it's maybe not the right thing?
I would put a bet on 99.9% of cases where people want to change their jobs. It is not their skill set that's holding them back. You likely have a huge number of skills that would make you transferable into what you want to do. What's holding you back is your mindset and the risk that you're willing to take. And so the first two things I did, I read 2 books. They're really good. One is called The Mountain Is Me. And the other one is called Ego Is the Enemy. And
2 great books.
2 great books. And I would read those because they help you unpack like how much of this is just me maybe holding fear and holding myself back from what I want, and how much of this is ego that I'm not willing to give up. Because look, I'm in a secure job right now, and I'm in something that, you know, I can put on my LinkedIn, and, you know, it gives me a sense of security and recognition from others. But how much of that is ego, which ultimately will never appease you, and shadow, how much of that is shadow, and how much of that is like true kind of purpose-driven attachment to your career. And both of those books really allowed me to kind of like separate those. And I think they'll make a lot of people realize, actually, it's not my skills that are stopping me from going after these new jobs and these new sectors. It's actually potentially just a lot of very understandable, very valid human fear. And being aware of that fear at least allows you to grapple with it. So I'd say that that's number one. And then I guess, again, like more practically, like get networking, like go and speak to people who are doing something that you're interested in. Again, that's can be a really scary thing to do. But I have relied and lent so much on friends who work in tech, and they can tell me about their experience. I was really keen after my experience in law to make sure I got like a really like unfiltered account of what it's like to work in that industry, because if someone had really given me an unfiltered account of corporate law, maybe I wouldn't have gone into it. So I went in and spoke to a lot of people and really interrogated whether it was a really good match for me, and that also gave me confidence to go after it. So I think if you can speak to someone who's in the profession, they might validate a lot of your suitability to it, and then that might make you go, okay, yeah, I can go and be like a product manager, I can go and be a filmmaker.
I think that's such great advice. So it's like giving yourself this internal validation by doing the introspection, reading the books, but then also receiving external validation too, speaking to people in different careers and seeing if it works for you. What brings you joy right now in your day-to-day life?
What brings me joy? So I'm currently planning my wedding.
Woo!
And that's bringing me a lot of joy. It's also emptying my bank account.
Oh.
But it's bringing me a lot of joy. I've tried to try new hobbies this year. Ran a marathon. And then immediately gave up running because I was like, I've ticked it off now. I've ran enough for a lifetime.
You're a climber girl.
I've started climbing, like the ultimate gay thing to do. So I'm just enjoying like trying new things. Trying new things, and also planning a wedding is like such an amazing privilege. So I'm really enjoying that as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all your wisdom. Thank you for just sharing so much heart and vulnerability today. I feel like you really came and said, no, I'm actually going to talk about my actual journey.
For real, yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for having the space for me to do it.
So at the end of every episode, we have this little tradition where I ask you, what was your casual magic of this week? I also share some of my casual magic, and then we're actually going to get one of the listeners to share their casual magic in a little voice message. My casual magic this week was I went back to my hometown and I was walking my dog Willow, and I think I had this realization of her mortality, because she's coming up to 12. And there was this moment when I was walking her in the fields and she just looked so happy. She was bounding around. She was like jumping through the long grass. And I really took in that moment with the bittersweetness that comes with things being temporary. And yeah, it just felt casually magic to be able to spend this time with her and to be soaking up whatever sweet moments we still have together, because I love her. She's literally grown up with me.
It's amazing. All we have is the present. I love it. I love that. So my casual magic is I got on the tube recently, and this man came and sat next to me who like hugely man spread his legs. And I looked at the woman next to me and we shared like a real like eye meet moment of like we both looked at each other and like rolled our eyes. And I'm like, oh, to be a woman in this world with this like mutual understanding of what men do that annoys us, but also that like we are this combined collective. And like it just made me really reflect on like womanhood and the connection that we can gain through that. And it was a really nice moment. I just love moments in London where there's just like so little opportunity for connection with others.
So true.
Where you can like have a little moment with someone.
Yeah.
So I really loved that.
Gorgeous.
And I want to find more of those moments. Most people on the tube like look at me like I'm a serial killer, but
yeah, but you're a northern gal.
I'm gonna keep staring them down until they step back.
Love it. Now we're going to listen to a little casual magic from you guys. And if you're interested in being featured next week, you can send in a voice note of your casual magic to our Instagram page.
Hi, so my name is Miriam. I'm from Malaga, a city in the south of Spain. But recently, like 2 weeks ago, I moved to Barcelona and I was in my flat. I was like feeling kind of lonely and I looked out of the window and I saw 2 pigeons taking care of each other and like kind of like kissing each other. And I spent like half an hour looking at them because I just love pigeons. I usually rescue them when they're sick and then reintroduce them and all that. And here pigeons are, in this city especially, they are so despised. And for me, like seeing that was like, they are so magnificent, they are so tender, and for me that was my casual magic.
And our final little tradition is I really like to take a moment to reflect on our current weeks and maybe reflect on what went well, what didn't, to carve an intention for the coming week. So a one word or a phrase that represents something you want to manifest into your next week. So I invite you guys who are listening to maybe get out a journal, get out your notes app, or maybe answer these questions in your head. And then I'm also going to ask you, Eve, what your intention for the next week is. The first question is, what went well this week? What is a little joy that you can celebrate? And then maybe what is something that didn't go so well this week? What challenged you? And using those, what intention do you want to manifest into the coming week? And maybe I can answer. So my life feels very hectic right now. I'm currently in the process of moving, and a win that I have to celebrate is that I am somehow balancing and managing a lot of things right now, and I'm doing my best to stay afloat within it all. But it feels challenging. I don't feel grounded. And so next week, I really want to get back onto habits that serve me. So things like journaling in the morning and like brain dumping my heavy thoughts onto a page so that they feel a little bit more manageable. Yeah, and inviting more balance into my life. So balance is my word.
I think as a person that deals with like a lot of anxiety, I always try and figure out how like high my stress cup is at all times. I think this week was definitely a week of me feeling like more like out of control with my anxiety. And normally what helps me is like just coming back to healthy habits. And next week I would really like to feel more grounded so that I don't feel that rise to anxiety as an emotion as easily. Yeah, and that I can kind of go through the week and allow anything that happens to kind of wash off me rather than allowing it to be absorbed.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling lighter. I feel like I need to process the wisdom that Eve decided to genuinely stop laughing. There was real wisdom. Yeah, I feel like she's just genuinely been through such a difficult journey. And so the reflections that she shared carries wisdom because it's lived experience. You can see that she's gone away and had to really think about these tough times in her life and decide how she wants to redefine her purpose in ways that suit her more. As always, if no one has told you today, I want to remind you that you are enough, exactly as you are, no matter where you are in your journey, no matter how purpose-driven or purposeless you may feel. Whether you're doing your absolute dream job, whether you're in a job that doesn't feel like it serves you anymore, or whether you're at a point of total uncertainty, every single point of your journey is valid and you're enough in every single one of those. I'm sending you so much love, and a little last note.
From me.
Stay tuned and stay magical.
Stay tuned and stay magical, folks. That was a bit sexy.
Folks.
Oh. Folks. We don't gender people. We don't assume.
Bye, guys.
Bye.